But this first time, I remember driving in and feeling this immediate connection. And I'm walking out, I feel so nervous. Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Wild Women in Photography. I'm going to start off this whole podcast with a solo episode. So I'm going to introduce myself first. I'm Brie Stockwell. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I am a landscape and nature photographer, and I love, love, love Texas, even though it's hot right now because I'm recording this in the summer. So I seriously began my photography journey working towards the goal of hosting a solo exhibition. And since then, I have immersed myself fully in photography and art. I've even become a creative coach. And I have started another podcast. Well, we've been doing it for about 2 years now. It's called A Creative Affair with artist, photographer, creative mentor, Len Metcalf, who is based in Sydney. So I will put a link to that podcast in the episode description if you're interested in checking that out. So much of my own learning has come from podcasts, and I really consider it a privilege to bring this one to you. I really can't wait to share all of these emotion-filled episodes with you from some really amazing women. Seriously, it's going to be awesome. Okay, but before I share those, I'm going to share a couple of short experiences from me, and then you'll get to hear from the rest of the women in the subsequent episodes. So through my journey, becoming a photographer and being a photographer, I really have noticed that my experiences have all involved some emotions and all kinds of emotions. And I actually think that's one reason that so many of us love to be creative, is because it fills us with these emotions that we wouldn't have otherwise. And so today I want to talk about a couple of emotions that have been kind of on repeat for me over the past few years. So the first one is nervousness. And I think I was so nervous in the beginning of my journey to just go out and practice photography. And I was nervous to make mistakes, which we all do. You know, it's obvious because we've all done it and we still do it. And we wouldn't be artists or creatives or photographers if we didn't, right? And so I remember back in, it was 2020, and I was working towards this solo exhibition, which I told you about in my intro. And I was trying to create opportunities for myself to just go into nature and immerse myself and really practice. In fact, in my coaching world, we call it massive action. And so I was so nervous to just go out and do this work. And I actually planned for myself to, I don't know why it is, I felt so drawn to go to White Sands National Park in New Mexico. It had actually just become a national park. And I felt really drawn to it. And I knew I needed to plan a solo trip there. So I told my husband that was what I was doing. He looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, don't worry, I'll be gone 5 days. I'll be fine. And so I packed up my car and I stayed in a little Airbnb. And actually, when I got there and I was checking in, the host asked me what I do. And I looked at him and said, I am a photographer. And I had never said that before. And so that was really fun to introduce myself that way. And I think it was my first time testing whether or not I believed it or not. But anyway, so I get to this place, and listen, a little bit more background on me. I have 4 kids. So I'm a mom of 4. So for like 20 plus years, we've taken family vacations. I've done like a couple of solo trips to go see people, but never really one that's like on my own for me and I'm gone. And by this time, I had a son in high school. And so he was, my youngest, was in high school. So it was fine for me. I felt like it was fine for me to finally just leave and go on my own. So I'm in this place. I know nothing of the area, like zero things. And I grab all my new equipment and oh, by the way, in the US, so I went at the end of August in the US, like the end of summer, and it is hot. So you can translate, like it's at least 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And here I am. I made sure I was very hydrated, but I'm walking out into the dunes every single night for all the nights I was there when it's hot, like I'm hot. So this is a big sacrifice on my part. But actually, now that I've been there so many times now, I just love it. And it doesn't matter if it's hot or freezing because it can be both. And I love it every time. But this first time, I remember driving in and feeling this immediate connection, grabbing my things, and I start walking into the sand, which is actually this white gypsum. It's actually not technically sand. It's gypsum that has been like eroded from the mountains, and it's kind of pooled in this place, and it's really just magical. And I'm walking out, I feel so nervous. I don't know where to go. I'm thinking to myself, where do I go? What do I do? I had some sort of idea of kind of how I could photograph these dunes, but maybe I felt also a little aimless. And so I'm just walking around aimlessly, feeling nervous, like for, I don't know, an hour more. And I was nervous I was going to get lost. I think I just followed the path. I can't remember if I tracked myself. Now I know how to track myself. I use Gaia. I use an app and I breadcrumb my way in and out. And so I actually never get lost now. But I was nervous I was going to get lost. And I don't remember photographing the sunset my first time, but I do remember trying to come out of the dunes when it was dark, like almost dark. And the white dunes actually just look super flat. Like you can't tell when things get dark, you can't tell where there's a big drop off, where there's not. I was just going from marker to marker, like where's the next marker? And I was trying to get out before it closed. And so I don't even know what I created because I just know that I had a lot of nervousness going on, which actually I think was maybe in a small way detrimental to my actual photography, but actually it didn't matter because what mattered to me is that I was out there and I was doing it. And by the time my 5 days were over, a lot of that had dissipated because I became more confident. I got to know the area, and I knew I had also made some photographs that I really love. And actually on that trip, I made one of my most favorite photographs that actually appeared that I put in my solo exhibition. So I think some nervousness is okay for a little while, but it's as we become more familiar that it can dissipate. So that is my first experience with White Sands National Park. I love it so much. It's so magical. And the second emotion I want to share with you today is just awe. And I know when I went to White Sands, I experienced that, but in 2021, a friend of mine, David Hunter, shout out to David Hunter, he has been so nice to me. I was a guest on Matt Payne's podcast, F-Stop, Collaborate, and Listen, as kind of a very newbie. How nice of him to have me on. And David reached out to me and has been just so nice, offering me help and feedback. And yesterday I got an email from him asking for some feedback on an image. And I just love this kind of like peer mentorship that can happen in a community. So thank you for all that, David. But in addition, David had an artist in residency in Capitol Reef National Park doing night photography. And he invited me to come. He had a house, I guess as part of the residency, you get a house in the middle of the park. And so he invited me. I know he invited other people. It wasn't just me. I'm like not that special, but I got the okay from him to bring my friend Marquesa, she is not a wild woman in photography, but she is a wild woman. Like, she is my adventure buddy and she will wait for me to do my photos. So also shout out to Marquesa and to all those friends who wait for us and sit around while we work on our creative passions. So David invites me to come to Capitol Reef, and I am all about saying yes to things. And so I just say, yeah, of course, I'm going to come out there. So went out in June of 2021, and he had this, depending on the weather, he had this really great itinerary lined up. And on one of the evenings, we drove from the house. Now, Capitol Reef is such an interesting park because there are so many wild places in the park. And there's a lot of places, there's accessible places where you can hike, but there are some places where you really have to, go off-roading and go out into the wild. So on this particular evening, he says, okay, we're going to go to the Strike Valley Overlook. And I'm like, cool. He goes, but we have to drive 2 hours. And I'm like, okay. So we drive from the park all the way around to the other side of this mountain range and then in. And actually it wasn't that bad. I know, it can take longer to drive into places, but this is what we do as like nature and landscape photographers. We have to go to where the things are. You know what I mean? We don't necessarily bring the subjects to us. So we drive around, we drive in off road partway, and we eat dinner, which I will spare you the details of Mountain House beef stroganoff. And we walk through this wash, and then we get to this place where we have to hike up. And it wasn't actually that long. I think it was maybe a mile and a half. I don't know, a couple miles. So that's not that far when you're hiking in somewhere. I had no idea what to expect. And it's kind of like, if you've ever been to the Grand Canyon and you stand on the edge, you're in awe. It's same. I get to the edge of this place and I'm like, this is a place I never knew existed. This valley, this overlook where you can see these incredible rock formations. And dang it, if I wish I would have looked up what kind of formations these are. I'll put them in the notes so you can see. And I'm going to share an image I took of the full moon on this night. But this is what we went to go do, is photograph the full moon rising. And we get out to the edge and it's just amazing. I truly, it kind of went in this S shape. You can't see, there is no sign of civilization. Truly, it is truly, truly a wild, wild place. So incredible and amazing. And it kind of got cloudy and rainy, and we thought maybe we might have to pack up, but we persevered. I found a composition that I thought might really work if the full moon were to show itself. And I just waited. We all just waited and hung out and talked. And it was so great. The moon kind of appeared from behind the clouds and night made. And I was able to get this photograph that I really, really love. And I love it because it was one of my first night-ish photography images, but also the experience itself of being there to see the full moon light up all of these different land formations in this incredible place was just, again, magical and awe-inspiring. So if you ever get a chance to go to Capitol Reef National Park, do go. Maybe you don't get to go to Strike Valley Overlook, but there are so many, like Utah is an amazing, amazing place. So I highly recommend it, even if you're not a photographer. So that is it. I just wanted to share those two stories and experiences. And I'm going to have more coming up because I've invited some of my good friends to come and chat with me that I've also had some really amazing experiences with. So you will get to hear from them, who are actually amazing photographers in their own right. I can't wait to share these upcoming adventures, experiences, stories, and episodes with you in the Wild Women in Photography podcast. See you next time. Want to come with me on my next adventure? Become a wild woman and join me on one of my small group photography escapes. Go to wildwomanphotography.com for all the details. While you're there, you can check out my image portfolio, episode transcripts, and more. Oh, and I'd love for you to support this podcast and all these incredible wild women in photography by leaving us a review with a 5-star rating. Thank you so much for listening.